Hello everyone, welcome to our Ecologies of Knowing presentation. Today we're going to be reflecting on decolonial reflections on shifting perspectives in knowledge, sustainability and pedagogy. I'm Lavanya and I'm joined by my colleagues Xavier, Lovleen, Paulina and Geeta today. Before we start, I'd like to present to you a quote that was shared to us by our dear friend Candy and is from DRM. It says, "Education is more than knowledge acquisition. It is more than schooling. It is a methodology of transformation, of onto-epistemological becoming." On this journey of onto-epistemological becoming, we started quite small. Xavier and I met in a focus group and developed curiosity about the link between the themes of decolonisation and sustainability. We quickly joined Professor Geeta, Dr. Lovleen, and Dr. Paulina in advancing our own knowledge using literature, people's lived experiences, and just having chats with people in our network to proceed on this journey together. We then applied for the LTDF and were successful in it. And we also started having conversations with people from across the globe, like Mr. Charlie Cobenham, Professor Kendi Gwanta, and Associate Professor Al Fricker. And as we started exploring more methods and practical examples, people with varied backgrounds in decolonial techniques joined us to enlighten our ideas. The underlying vision for our project is to transform education for sustainable development by reimagining our relationship with the natural environment, using alternate indigenous and decolonial knowledge systems. Most importantly, we ensured that we were pursuing critical self-reflection. We had dialogues rather than debates. We gave priority to lived experience and community voices, interdisciplinary approaches, and always had an openness to transform. Over to my colleague Xavier.
Hi. We encouraged participants to observe nature in a really urbanized environment, and we aimed to do this so that way people would actually start to learn about the animals that live in the cities and live alongside humans. So we did this by holding several nature walks around a little local park on our university campus, and we aimed to encourage people to see or at least start to learn about the more unusual or even learn more about usual standard animals in these urban areas, and we aimed them to share personally significant observations with us and on iNaturalist, which is a community-based data collection organization where you can submit your observations of living organisms. So you can see through all of our data so far, we've collected, I want to say, over a dozen different species. And yeah, it's been working out pretty well so far. I'm going to go ahead and pass to Lovleen.
We have done like 3 workshops, and basically the first one was like introduced by Kendi, who introduced us to the philosophy of Ubuntu, which is I am because we are. And we began with this like lovely community agreement where we wanted to be respectful to each other, open to each other, non-judgmental, and somehow embrace like deep listening and active participation, and sometimes even including silence as one of the practice. And before we discuss like the broader practices, we also we actually started with ourselves. So we shared, for instance, the story of our names and our identities being expressed through our symbols, and we discussed around, reflected on what brings us here. So from self-understanding, the journey was like slowly, eventually, shifting towards the community. And from this, I will pass on to Vanya.
Thanks, Lovleen. And following the critical self-reflection that Lovleen was talking about, Professor Al Fricker introduced us to things that were potentially lost from the over-focus of the Western educational system and the lack of focus on plural education systems. And then we were introduced to the concept of curriculum branding, which aims to undo this exact loss by shifting perspectives towards indigenous and decolonial knowledge systems. We were also introduced to practical methods like the yarning pedagogy and the 8 ways method, which reoriented us to learning using relationships, people, and storytelling, putting community at the center of redesigning our classrooms. Charlie Cobenham, a research scholar from the WITS Edinburgh programme, further enlightened us using a practical framework which allows us to learn from ceremony, community, elders, language, land, and community again, about the traditional ways of learning. Most importantly, how we can actually practice this in our systems by, for example, not using slides while presenting, using powerful imagery and metaphors, and just practically implementing what we're speaking about. Over to my colleague.
So then we had the Canadian perspective. We have Kent and Elder Anne. So continue with the deeper listening exercises with Kendi. Elder Anne invited us to look inward, to listen to ourselves and embrace peaceful healing. She shared with us her own healing process, and she encouraged us to reflect on our own journeys, to transform the pain and drama into acceptance and love. She reminds us that we are guests in this world and that we should respect and support each other. She also used an example of the forest to show that everything exists in balance. So then Kent introduced us to planetary boundaries and the framework to understand about the limits of growth. She spoke about relationality and system thinking and how everything is connected and why multiple views and perspectives matter. She described about plant seeds through various ways, through our mind, our body, our emotion, and spirit. And she said that if we nurture these plant seeds through awareness and openness, then transformation can begin from within. Change doesn't always start large, so it grows slowly. So if we change, if we transform ourselves, then we can begin to inspire others. Now back to Lovleen for sharing another inspiring story. Yeah.
So we also had a session with Ranjani where we learned about like a school that is part of the Kaigal Environment and Education Program. So they are working with children from an Adivasi community. The word Adivasi means earliest dwellers of the land. And the philosophy is basically of this school and of this program is rooted in the Krishnamurti's principles, which sustainability is at the heart of their learning. And with the vision of creating a very meaningful experience for these young children and young minds, the school is basically nurturing a very deep connection with the world. So supporting children to go into sensitive and very aware and very thoughtful human being. So that's like a very good starting point and like, you know, establishing the seeds for the future of this world. And then we had Gaston, who brought it all together, all the work that we have been doing. And remember, Kendi introduced us to, you know, the individual reflection. So bringing us full circle from where Kendi began. So what started with individual stories slowly start to unfold into like a shared space of collective storytelling. And we reflected on moments of like inclusion and exclusion in a shared decision making and community knowledge. And this is like guided by like very simple principles like take little space, give space to others, and listen deeply without interruption. So it felt like a gentle reminder that our individual stories are never separate. They are in fact like threads in something much bigger. And this is all like, you know, woven together through listening to each other and then reflecting and being part of the community. So it felt like a very gentle reminder, as I would say, to be that, you know, we are not like data points in this world. We have our own stories going on. Passing on to Geetha.
Yes. So during this exciting project, we did face some challenges and learned valuable lessons. First, managing time zones with speakers across the globe can be quite tricky, and we should try to group them in such a way to minimize these time zone problems. Second, for hybrid sessions, it's essential to book the rooms quite early, test the AV setup, and know exactly who to contact for support. We also learned that long online sessions can cause screen fatigue to people who are there. So we should keep them short, adding breaks and creating space for interaction. Finally, setting clear expectations that these sessions can involve discussions and activities, and this will ensure participants are not caught off guard when they come for the activities, you know. So final slide. This project has been a truly transformational experience for all of us. We've experienced the power of learning through dialogue, especially developing deep listening skills, and also to reflect. We should be open to new ideas, new ways of thinking, and also new ways of doing things. And of course, many new learning methods. And this, dear friends and colleagues, is just a drop in the ocean, and there is so much more that we can learn. So we leave you with one question. What stays with you from this short presentation? So feel free to reach out and join us on this ongoing journey that we are having of discovery and action. Thank you so much.